how we make sense of the world. And at first, there are no words, so it's our sensory experience. So first, we're working with how we sense the world. And then we start to actually put words, is the next cognitive step, being able to put words to what we see and sense in the world. And then we start to be able to not only have words for things, but start to use things. And we can put words to that also. And then we start to think about things. And then we start to think not just concretely about things and people and actions, but we start to think about them in more abstract ways. And so that's sort of a development of how cognition starts and becomes more sophisticated throughout the lifespan. So if there are ruptures, we can go back to an early time and start to develop the body skills that can support someone in developing the ability to have more cognitive skills, more ability to think about whatever they want to think about. And what we're going to do today is look at different ways to support, for the body to support the development of cognitive skills. And what I wanted to start with is cognitive grasp. It's with the hand. So what I'm going to do now is just show you the progression, and then we'll go back and do each step. And as we're doing each step, I want you to experience how your cognition develops with these different kinds of grasp. So the first grasp is really like this. The baby is just sort of grasping from the palmar aponeurosis. It's just sort of this pulsation, but it develops into the pinky grasp. And remember that pinky movement is what's happening when the baby is nursing. And then it brings in the three other fingers. The thumb is not part of it. So first it's this, and then it's this. The pinky leads and the other fingers follow. And just feel what happens to you as you start to do this movement. What the sense of things are as you do this movement. We're going to spend more time with it in a little bit. The second grasp, when we go in, and so we're at need structure here. When you get to autonomy, there's something else that starts to happen. The index finger starts to get active, both extension and flexion and extension. And they start to do things like go, look, or look. And they point at things because they're curious about those things. And what's helpful is if you put words to it for them. Oh yeah, there's the camera. Yeah, it's the camera. Or, oh, that's a great color. That's a blue. So you're starting to help them put words to the things they're curious about. The other thing that happens with cognitive grasp at autonomy stage is they start to find, as Joel was talking about earlier, little things, and they use the pincer grasp. And with a pincer grasp, oh, there's a little thing. They pick something up and they really examine it. They're really interested in it, whatever these little things are, that probably don't have a great deal of meaning to you, but for the child who it has not really examined the world much at all. This is when they start to look at things sort of specifically. And then they might want to give it to you. And here's another development of grasp, which is to be able to let go and give something. That's part of the grasp that happens here. The hand is really doing a lot of talking, exploring, understanding the world, and wanting to share it. So that's this grasp. The next grasp in will structure is when the thumb becomes, be able to flex. So, that's a good thing I pick up for that. I'll pick this up. So I can, because I can use my thumb in a flexor motion, I can start to grasp things with my thumb, and the rest of my hand follows in a strong way. And when I hold on to my cup like this, it's a very different experience of my understanding the world and whatever the thing is than this. And when you do it, you'll feel it. So there's this, and when I do it like this, there's a part of me that wants to, I don't want to do it actually because I'm smarter than a 2-year-old, but I want to start pounding this. But the adult part of me says, I don't want to spill the tea. But, you know, so there's an action part to being able to grasp like this, and a strength. And I'm exploring the world in a different way. The next grasp we've talked about is, I need a teacup. Could I have a teacup? Is where the fingers you start to be able to extend. Remember, we've been able to let go. And there's this teacup grasp where the pinky comes out. You couldn't do this before. This is a development of grasp. And just in case you can see when I'm doing this, this is very different than this, or this, or this. There's something different that's happening. And within the grasp and within the actual physical holding of something in this way, I understand and sense the world differently. And I start to feel differently about the thing that I'm exploring. Would you like some tea? Would you like some?
Well, thank you.
So that's a different kind of relationship. So then we...
It's a delicacy.
Yes.
It starts to get delicate.
But it's more refined, but there's a little bit of, role that we take on that's different than I'm exploring the world, or I'm, you know, it's like, well, what do you think? You know, well, what do I think about this? We start to behave differently, and our world is different, and how we understand the world is different when we're doing this than when we're doing this.
What structure is that?
Love, sexuality.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the pinky.
Yeah. The next grasp that comes up is this, with the opponents. So the pinky and the thumb can meet each other, the tips, and push into each other. And this is when kids come into their cognition, they go to school, they start to think about things, they start to think about values and norms, and they start to be able to say to you, no, you're wrong, my teacher told me you do it this way, you know. And when you see adults getting into arguments, there's this, their head comes forward, they come into the relationship like this, and they start to say, this is what I think, and whatever you told me, I don't believe, because I know, because I read it here. Matter of fact, the paper today said this. This kind of way of relating to what we know in the world. Yeah, it's how we relate to what we know in the world becomes more abstract, and we have a different relationship to it. Lastly, the last grasp, when we come into solidarity, performance is really about the refinement of starting to use our skills and starting to use how we think about things and exploring the world in that way. We're using the best of ourselves, and we're trying to develop that even more. So there's this sense of practicing to become as good as we can be at something in the healthy position. And so when they start to have this kind of grasp, all the fingers are extended, and they start to hold on to things. Is there something soft that I can toss? Okay, yeah. So here's where they get, this grasp becomes very refined, becomes very sophisticated, and what we're trying to do is land things where we want them to land and use a lot of ourselves to grasp and throw something, but in a refined way. And when we have that kind of ability, we're actually tracking. These are sophisticated concepts. When you can track like this, you're tracking speed and distance together with what your purpose is. So when you're throwing something and trying to throw it directly to where you want it to go, you have to figure out how hard you have to throw as well as how fast it's going to be going to get where you're going. That's pretty abstract thinking and very sophisticated thinking. So that grasp happens at that age between 7 to 12. Boom! And that's the final grasp where you're using all the strength and refinement together with your cognition to figure out how to relate to the world in a different way than just, this is what I think. So those are the grasps that we're going to play with. Yes.
Solidarity.
Solidarity performance.
And you're acting at a distance now. It's the first grasp you've shown us where you're influencing at a distance. You're not just picking it up and holding it.
That's true, but it's how you understand the world is more complex, more abstract thinking, and it's a much more sophisticated way to interact and understand the world.